Good day, gang. Welcome to Forward Focus. It is October 18th, and we have got quite a sell-off going on here. The market has gone into total free fall mode at the moment. This has to do with what we talked about last week and over the course of this week in League of Traders, where we are dealing with some action on the larger time frames. By the way, this is a lovely little 2B here coming off the lows. Let me go to our larger time frames here. So here's the 240 minute. So what we've been looking at here is that we had our nice two main legs up. We're coming into lots of resistance over here. And then we had this 2T the other day coming off of a steeper 2T over here. And then we've been looking at a couple possibilities in here. We've been looking at, potential it could go to momentum reversal, but the momentum on the downside really wasn't favoring that as much. So we were kind of looking more for this to do closer to a head and shoulders. Ended up breaking here with the two waves on this base with a little bit of an avalanche. Go change this to a smaller time frame here. You can see it on the 60-minute. And what's interesting about this is that it has so much momentum on the secondary move down. So came into measured move support right around here, but rounding off at the highs with the 2T, we're seeing this push even further. So this is really trying to get going on the downside, doing a larger correction on that daily chart. Looks like we're going to continue to see that try to play out here, probably as we head into next week. We're going to continue to see this resistance on the larger daily and intraday charts here. So here's our previous high. It held it perfectly. Really tricky daily chart here. It's kind of a mess, but good momentum here on the downside. We might get a little bit of a retest of the high given the way that this is formed here. So it has a steep move down. A lot of times that can do things like that where it will go and retest, but generally speaking, this zone here should hold over the next couple of weeks. So that's what we're looking at here as we head into the weekend. I'll show you this on the other charts. Here's our Russell. Right at about measured move support on the Russell. At the low here. So pretty close. Maybe 76.4. Yeah, kind of halfway between 76.4 and 100%. So this still has room that we could see this continue to try to push. Here's the 1,000 tick. You can see the 2T on here. And then we had the smaller 2T, and this is kind of just rolling over. So here's the very top of the congestion. We're right at S1 support, which is just the trend channel support here. Larger time frame, you can take a look at the momentum on the downside. You can see the time frame charts have much stronger momentum going on. Here's our 240. So what we talked about last week on this 240 was that we were dealing with it coming back up into this midway zone here. And so with this 2T here, this looks like it's going to continue to hold this zone of resistance here for a while. So we should continue to see this kind of hang out in here. Hold on a second, you guys. Okay. ES, pretty much the same. Same deal. We had a really nice 2T the other day. Coming off our high here. And this is kind of continue to play off of this high. We're into support from the lower end of this zone, but we look at our daily chart, you know, good extension on this impulse wave. There's definitely still room for this to play around here at highs. So I imagine things are going to get, you know, continue to be a little bit trickier in here, more of the back and forth, because it was this pretty strong move up in the market. And despite how fast things have turned around intraday, it might not get totally turned around with stronger momentum intraday just because of the way this pulled up higher. So we'll want to watch this as it corrects because it might shift momentum as it gets in here and come back up and do some retests on this. Pay attention to the Fibonacci retracement levels from this upside move as well as the smaller one, because both of those you're going to get different fib levels that you'll want to watch for. And then even the one on the downside here, the Fibonacci retracement levels on that downside, they're going to be key too. So here's one of them you want to watch. You want to watch this one. And then you want to watch this one. The one on the downside is kind of our main one that we're working off of. And then the smaller one here in the middle would be the second most important. So the smaller one right here, where we've got a little bit of extension past it, that's going to be our next main one that's really important here at this level. I'm going to open up our other charts here. We'll take a look at what's going on in the futures market, or sorry, not the futures market, the Forex market. Last night we had a really nice base in the euro dollars, basing at highs on larger time, well, the larger intraday time frames. But the daily and like the 240, those were pretty extended here. I can show it to you on the futures contract while we wait for that to pull up here. Kind of see that close to measured move there on our indices. It's a little slow to load. I think all that volume on the downside kind of taxed my computer here. Well, here is the euro dollar on the 30 minutes. So you can see this. Here's our base overnight. So what we had going on was we already had 3 waves up. It's kind of coming out of a larger zone of congestion. So this is pretty extended here. We've got a nice 2-wave main move and a little push on the upside. You can see the momentum is starting to shift here on the 30-minute time frame. We're coming into previous highs here, got some lows over here. So this should start to stall in here, but overall this daily time frame holding up pretty well. We've got really nice impulse move on the upside compared to some of the other ones. What's interesting about this is that when we look at the weekly chart, we've been watching this here for a couple weeks where we've been looking at how this could perform here. Could this do a breakdown, continue, give us a bigger megaphone formation? And it's been kind of dealing with the lower end of this channel with the congestion. So we saw that same pattern kind of break down here in the futures market on the NASDAQ. Whoops, I changed this chart. Got rid of my NASDAQ chart. Hold on, let's put that back up. So like on a 200 tick chart, you can see how we had a tilted continuation on the downside. Maybe. Let's me pull it up. The Russell's trying to push for that full 100% extension. 60-minute charts are straight down. It's really going to make things briskier as we go into the afternoon here. Well, maybe I won't show you that comparison yet. Can grab it from my other screen maybe here. So here's where we kind of saw that same shift, and it went for the measure move. It actually even went further than that. But this is an example of what we were looking for as the possibility on the euro dollar, and the euro dollar is kind of like right here. But what you'll notice is that the euro dollar, when it got to this point, it popped, and we didn't see that happening on the NASDAQ. It just kind of congested along here and ended up giving that breakdown there. So it went for that further continuation. So that's what we were looking at as the potential for the risk, though, with the downside on the euro dollar on that weekly time frame, especially since it only had one main move down off of the high. So it increased the risk of that potential. And that potential is still there. Even though we've got this pop here on the daily chart, it's still there until it confirms the channel break on that upside. And we don't have that happening yet. So definitely still going to be a risk. Dollar yen, it's basically just been in the symmetrical triangle. As we've seen, we had a little bit of the false break to the downside. So we can get these false moves back and forth where it breaks the symmetrical triangle to start with and then pops and goes back the other way. So this is at a zone where on the daily chart, we're seeing a little bit of this inverse head and shoulders come into play. This was forming as we went into last week, kind of pulling up in this channel. It went a little bit fast. Kind of was hoping that we would get another shoulder in here for the smaller inverse head and shoulders. So here's shoulder, head, shoulder, shoulder, head, shoulder. If it had a little bit of that smaller shoulder, that could help it do the measured move a little bit easier. Instead, it's kind of struggling here. So it kind of went and pushed up a little further. So you've got some measured impulse move size at this level, right at this previous resistance in here. So it still looks like we want to push higher, but it could shift the momentum because of the way this other shoulder tried to form here, basically breaking out a little bit too early. Here's our pound. And what we've got going on here on the pound is, not quite a head and shoulders, more like a cup with handle here, but the handle was kind of a mess. Didn't really give a clean setup. On the weekly time frame, you can see it was trying to go down for wave 2, but didn't hit the measured move. So it really had this megaphone that was forming in here, but it only had one move down into the megaphone. So you've got one pivot, two pivot, 3, 4. It held 5, but it's a higher risk setup there because ideally with one move back down, we would have seen a measured move back down to the low. So the risk of this is that it could have gone and broken lower and continued on the downside here. So it's a higher risk setup on this particular megaphone. What we're going to be seeing now is probably more congestion because it did bounce pretty hard off of it. So even though it had the higher risk that it could fail, it had enough of a reaction off of the low here that that's really helping it out. Now, when we look at this on the daily chart again, you can see we're pretty extended up here. We had the Phoenix, even though it was a messy Phoenix, and that's kind of going into 1, 2, 3, but there's still room for it to push a bit more up into here. So I'm not totally ruling this out as, being totally done on the upside on the smaller time frame. By the way, goodness, you guys, these futures are just falling here. Look at this. This is our 200 tick chart. So we've got momentum gaining on the downside. What we'll usually see with this type of move is that we get some really rapid bounces, but widening up. Be very cautious the rest of the day. We've got a little baby to be here at the lows, but our momentum on these bigger time frames is just so strong. It's interesting. Gold's not really moving. Gold is actually something that going into the end of the day yesterday, I was bearish on. I'm going to show you guys the chart on gold here quick. And even though the market is crashing, gold's not going up. So it's very, very interesting. Okay, so here's what we were looking at in gold. And The NASDAQ happened to form a similar pattern yesterday after hours, so you can see it on the MNQ. So you have your move down, push up, slower shift in momentum, that triggers the short. So gold did go down overnight, but then we had a megaphone down here and it ended up popping back up into this kind of congestion zone in here. Let me grab you a current chart on gold. So, oops, let's go down to the bottom here. Here's currently what happened. So we got that breakdown, right? And it started out the same as the NASDAQ did on the tiny time frames overnight. But instead of giving the continuation, this momentum on the downside was actually slower than over here. And really we want it to be faster or at least the same speed so that it can get going and keep that breakdown going. So what it's doing right now is it is pulled up here and it's kind of basing. Like it might actually have another pull up, but it's not really coming up with the overall market, which is really different. We don't see that quite happening usually. Usually the gold will basically be trading opposite of what the overall market does, but we haven't seen that correlation as well recently. It hasn't been as strong of a correlation of opposites. Looking through your guys' questions here quick. Oil really took off yesterday and it hit resistance overnight as well, kind of into early morning. We started to see it shifting. Grab our larger charts on oil too here. Had a pretty major pivot overnight or into the morning here. So here's oil. And oil traditionally trades in the direction of the overall market, so not surprising we are getting selling in oil, but even it hasn't traded perfectly in correlation with the market lately. You can see it had the rounded lows, so it had a lot more relative strength yesterday than the overall market did. Popped up here to retest this highs. That's actually a pattern where it could go into a cup with a handle. It needs to hold the zone here for support in order for that to form, but that's something that is a possibility here on the 3,000 tick chart. Even though it did fall sharply off of that high, it can still go into a trading range and hold up there. So we'll see how this holds over the next week or so. I'm going to be continuing to do probably a lot more back and forth action. This pulls back down to this low, then it's going to be more likely to do something that'll continue and break down. And the bigger time frame is basing at the lows. The much larger time frame is basing at the lows. So we got to see how it holds that midway point there. All right, let's see. You got some questions here. Let's close this. Boeing has taken a hit today. Yeah, Boeing. It had that megaphone up there at the highs after two waves up. Just triggered a breakdown here today. Can see that base break here. And this is what we got to worry about in oil. So notice how this pulled back. It was in the congestion, it pulled back. Well, it didn't hold that middle zone. It went, pulled to the lower zone, kind of had a little bit of a base and broke down. That's exactly what I was just talking about could happen in oil. GLD, I mean, basically the same thoughts as on gold itself. I'm still thinking, oops, got typo. Still thinking that this can break down here just how it's forming on the intraday charts, but daily isn't enough to really scare me out yet. I mean, here we've got the intraday, the 30-minute. You can see those two waves that we saw on the futures contracts to the upside. So it kind of depends on how this plays out in here now. It's off to a little bit of a slower start on the correction, so that could shift the momentum enough to bring it back up. Our daily chart is still hanging on. It's looking like it might try to do an inverse head and shoulders, could do like a 2B or something. So we're still trying to hold on a little bit over here, but we are at good resistance on the bigger time frames. So like the weekly, let's see, where'd my weekly go here? So here's what the weekly looks like. So you can see we're at a pretty decent level of resistance. We've got these lows over here. They're serving as resistance at this high. And this impulse move on the upside, pretty similar compared to a lot of other impulse moves. So it makes sense here that we see a greater correction take place on the weekly charts. So really, I wouldn't get too excited for this to just like charge and keep going up. I think it has the potential because it's gaining momentum. So sometimes we will see those just kind of keep going, just like this did on the downside. See how it gains momentum on the downside. So that can happen over here, but I wouldn't be surprised either if it goes into a longer base. So I'm not very bearish on this. Short term, yes, but longer term, no, because I really like the rounding off here, the head and shoulders we got going, and the momentum shift, the momentum that is coming in here. It would have to take some sort of additional momentum shift at this level to keep this from going up. So for example, if this pulled back like this into here and did like a 2T here, that could possibly pull this down so that it goes into maybe a longer range, or it comes and holds this channel and kind of pulls back down like that. But it would need to change the momentum like that to get me really interested in it in that kind of a situation. Causing you guys a lot here today. I've got a tickly throat. Sorry about that if I just kind of disappear for a second. Dollar franc, I mean, the Swiss franc, I haven't really felt too strongly about one way or the other lately because I think it has room to break the channel either way. Right now, it's kind of aiming to the upside, but it could do a break to the upside and then head back lower. So I think just because it is currently trying to break to the upside, the larger time frame might not be able to sustain it. Let's go look at the daily. Yeah, maybe a base with a breakout here on the daily charts. You can see it, I mean, it's looking a lot like what gold is looking at, like a 2-minute chart of gold. It Probably is going to pull down here, continue to hold in the range here for a few more weeks. I wouldn't expect too much excitement on this right now. The 4-hour chart going down to intraday. We've got a little bit of a 2B pattern on a 15-minute time frame. Look at the hourly. Hourly was a nice double top, so this still can pull down, I think, on our hourly and our 60-minute time frame. It still has room to continue lower, so I wouldn't get too excited on this at this point one way or the other, because a 2B at this point, not really good trend placement. I think the way this is trying to gain momentum, it could come down to this zone in here easier. Maybe like a tilted avalanche or something could bring it back down in there. Let's see. Amazon. Amazon's getting crushed here today. This looks lower still too. I mean, you're going to come into support here, but it still looks like it's going to come back into this zone pretty easily. You got that good shift in momentum at the highs, really sharp selling. Very, very difficult for that to recover on the 60-minute time frame. The daily chart, you can see we've got that 2T action kind of here. So this is doing, what we were talking about the other day, where with this strong momentum, it's kind of shifting. So I think this is still going to see more downside, which of course makes sense with what's going on in the overall market too. Just Canadian dollar, a little bit of support here, but it could still pull down into 1.31. Yeah, intraday still has room to pull more too. Weekly, look like it's trying to break down. Kind of pulled up a little bit. It's not like a good avalanche because it should have done like that for more of the weekly avalanche. It kind of pulled out further, but the momentum still is favoring the downside currently. It wouldn't take a lot to try to shift this though. So you can see this pulled up here, and now it's trying to do 2 moves in here. So that could pop that back up there, and that could even shift this farther to bring in more bullish action. So this is kind of at a hesitation zone here, an indecision zone. It really needs a little bit more time to base out in order to give it a good setup on the upside. So this is something where usually like longer term, I wouldn't be playing this longer term right now because there's not a fully developed pattern yet. And then on the daily, I wouldn't do anything in this here either. Aussie got a double bottom here on the daily. It trades a lot with the euro. So of course we were seeing the same kind of action here with the euro and then the little pop here. It still can turn back around though. So not overly excited here yet, because I still think that could turn back around on the downside. It's just something for smaller intraday charts at this point. Resistance up here, it's coming into it really fast, so reversal patterns aren't going to be as strong. Usually the first bounce will have the best reversal pattern, so we saw that first bounce over here, and then the second one won't necessarily be as strong. We saw that kind of here, and then the retest. When things are having the really sharp, stronger momentum. Not really stronger momentum on this one, but I think a main thing we're seeing in a lot of these Forex pairs is the larger time frames aren't really at key points for setups. The Kiwi is trying a 2B here. It's a steep one. It has stronger momentum here on the downside as it's coming into this previous low. So the main risk that we've got is this has a main drop here, and then it's trying to do the 2B, but the momentum on the 2B is pretty strong. Let's go on the monthly. Trend placement's okay on the monthly chart. What we usually see with this type of action on the monthly is when you get the really strong drop and it bounces about 50%. When it comes back into that previous low zone, we do get 2B and momentum reversal patterns that can give us a bump up. So it looks like that's what's trying to happen here. I think because of the increased momentum on that second drop, though, we might get that third move so that it shifts the momentum like that to get that bounce. So the monthly here actually is, as far as like all of the Forex pairs go, it probably has like the best situation to try to have some upcoming patterns here that are going to be really strong. Oil, by the way, is continuing to sell off. It is going pretty rapid on the downside still. It is coming into pivot highs from yesterday. But it's back past the 50% retracement now at this point. So that does make it more likely that it's going to end up back at the lower end of the range as we go into next week. I'll show you guys that here. See this? So it's pulled back more than the 50%. It's right at the support from these highs, but it still has easy room to make it back to those lows as we go into next week. Target. Exhaustion move here. Trying to do a 2T. Trying to reverse setups at levels like this is tricky because there's a greater risk that it could shift more and still put in higher highs before it really turns around. So I don't get too excited about these turning around. You can see it has like a little bit of a 2T up there, but it might not fully give us much of a reversal yet. It's such a strong secondary move that it might take a little bit of time before this turns around, like what we saw happening on oil overnight. So I probably wouldn't do too much with this. If I was long it, I would be expecting a correction to happen. So I think you're going to get some pullback here coming up. which is not like a really rapid drop setup. Oops. Walmart's a little better, just because you can see it has more overlap over here. So this extra shift here is basically a 2T with a little bit of that extra blurb. So Walmart, I could see pulling back faster than Target. But it's definitely at really good resistance here too. Costco. Could do another little baby 2T in here on the weekly. I think they're all pretty exhausted, but with the momentum on these, we don't have a setup yet on daily charts. So I'd wait until we see a setup on that daily chart. I wouldn't just look for that correction immediately. Just watch for something like a 2T, and that would show you that you're really going to be heading into that. Now with Costco, previous high is going to be a resistance level because it did flush here. So it might do kind of like a baby 2T on the smaller time frame or something at that level. I wouldn't expect too much more out of these though without getting a good correction on the weekly charts here, even the monthly. Let's look at the monthly on these. So here's the monthly. You can see it's like straight up. It's really tricky to predict how corrections are going to form when the momentum goes straight up like this and it's building momentum, because so many of these just kind of keep surging. You know, you'll get like the short little corrections and then they'll just kind of keep going. And you get a lot of that speculation coming in. So I don't like to, just say, hey, it's going to flip right here. I like to look for something that's going to give me a confirmation on the smaller time frame. But yeah, it's definitely tricky with these retails. Home Depot, same thing. Can see it's pretty exhausted. You've got your 3 waves up and then you've got your extension. This should correct here on the monthly time frame soon. It should bring in a bigger correction. But we don't have a setup yet on the daily charts. Lows. Looks so messy. That was a nice steep 2T there, but right now it's just, ugh. Haha, Macy's. Poor Macy's. It still has room to go lower. You'll start to get some kind of recovery bounces as coming into this zone, but I wouldn't give it too much confidence. So like a lot of times you'll get like these rapid bounces, but I don't think we're going to get any really good turnaround here on Macy's for a long while. Netflix holding double top. It's kind of going into a wedge here. Symmetrical triangle. So it's a good zone to bounce on shorter time frames, which we're seeing here. But nothing at this low to give us a pattern that is confirming a bigger bounce yet. And it really pulled back too much to get a decent Phoenix too. So I wouldn't really do anything with this one right now either. That was a good extension yesterday with the gap, You see there's like that measured move there, but it's exhausted it, but it didn't hold up. It actually, you know, in order to get it to bounce harder, it should have kind of kept going with that momentum more, then did a pause and gone up. Even if it paused right here at 300 and went into base for Phoenix, it still wouldn't really be strong enough to get it to come back up to the upper end of that range. So I don't really see anything on that one right now either. Let's see. Apple is going for 2T. We've been talking about that. That's still holding. That should bring in a correction here soon too. You can see you've got the measured move here and there. So this should start to give us some reversal patterns on the weekly time frame. Beyond meat. Oh boy. So here you can see the 2T we were talking about and went into an avalanche, and this still kind of looks like it's going to come back down into this zone down here. 60-minute charts. The momentum increased. So again, going against that is not going to be easy whatsoever. Oops. Let's see. I'm just looking over and see what's going on in the futures market right now. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of backlash coming out against Beyond Meat after the IPO. Like, that wasn't predictable, right? Let's see. You guys have any questions on anything else you want me to take a look at? Roku, really good resistance. This had a nice 2T here intraday. You can see this kind of widening up here. So it's like an ascending megaphone. This is something that should keep pulling down too off of this level. Not necessarily as fast as it went up and as fast as it started, but it should still continue to hold this resistance on the daily time frame here over the next couple of weeks. Tesla's good resistance. This level, also something that this zone should hold here over the next couple of weeks. Intraday, nice turnaround. So again, also expecting that intraday to hold on Tesla. Can see the nice measured move here right into the gap closure, the momentum on the upside. So this zone will want to hold. Sometimes we get double taps of highs when this happens. So like you'll get an initial reaction and you'll get like that double tap, kind of like you had at the low here with the double tap of the low. So that is possible, but this zone should hold. All right, gang, if you got any other questions, let me know. Tesla is running on hopes and dreams, kind of, yeah, at this point. Here's the weekly. Show you guys the monthly. Such a messy chart here. So you can see it's kind of bouncing off the lower end of that congestion. So it's just not a pretty chart there. All right, you guys, we're going to wrap this up here then, and I will see you all next week. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend, you guys. You are very welcome. Yep, check over on YouTube for the replay.